It's March 13th, 2023, and today on Locked On Twins, we are going to be talking about my 10 lead pipe locks for your Minnesota Twins. So sit tight, buckle up, because that's coming up now on Locked On Twins, your team every day.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello again, and welcome back to Locked On Twins, part of the Locked On Sports Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Brandon Warren. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon_WARNE, as it states on the bottom of this video if you are watching on YouTube. Today, we are going to tackle my 10 lead pipe locks. So these are things I think are going to happen for sure for your 2023 Twins. Now, last week, in the inaugural week of me taking over the show, we did 10 bold predictions. And some of them were excessively bold. Some were, a little less so. In this case, I feel confident that all 10 of these things are going to happen. So let's just dive right in. First of all, though, I want to say this. Please be active in the comments if you can on YouTube. Give us 5-star review on iTunes, Google Play, wherever you're listening, Spotify. It just helps us on the business end of things. So please feel free to do that. Leave a comment if you can as well. Too, if you have questions to be answered on the show, I will solicit them on Twitter. And feel free to ask them in the comments. Feel free to send them to me on Twitter or just hit me up wherever, email, Pony Express, whatever it takes. I want this to be an interactive show. I want to talk to you. I want you to talk back to me and that sort of thing. And let's have some fun with it. And then finally, too, I know, and I addressed this late last week, too, that the posting schedule has been a little sporadic. It's been a little bit off. It won't stay that way. I have my 4-month-old son during the day while my wife is at work. And so it makes it hard to record and not have any interruptions. But who knows? Maybe he'll join me for one and we'll make it work. But when like I said, when he goes to daycare, everything is going to kind of clear up so that he can be where he needs to be and I can be where I need to be. Now, with that said, let's go for it. 5 lead pipe locks in segment 1 here. They're all offense. In the second segment, all pitching, except for the last one. I know people count these things, but then in the final segment, we have questions from you. And so we'll get to as many of those as we can. I think we had 7 or 8 or 9 that I put down that were good. We're not going to have time to cover all of that, but we'll have more time if I get into this. So let's just dive right in. Number 1, I have Byron Buxton finishing top 5 in the MVP vote if he plays at least 100 games. Now, I toyed with top 3, but then I thought about it, like, if he plays 103 games, it's awfully hard to finish top 3. Top 5, I could see. But top 3, if you only play 112, 115 games, that was a little bit too far of a bridge for me to cross. So Byron Buxton will finish top 5 in the AL MVP vote if he plays at least 100 games this season. Mark it down. Number 2, the Twins and their fans, will not miss Luis Arraez as much as they thought they would, with one caveat: on the field. Now, it's not that I'm necessarily expecting Luis Arraez to stumble with Miami. I just think his fit, it was a little odd. He wasn't a very good second baseman defensively, and Miami will probably find that out too. Offense, he was phenomenal, but not a natural first baseman, not really the kind of guy you're going to put at DH. And, there are some health woes that, if they were to get worse, would significantly cap his potential as an offensive threat. The knees, just the aches and pains. It became obvious late in the season that he was a compromised player. He still obviously put together a tremendous season, but beyond that, the fact that he was kind of a hybrid, but at the same time not good defensive player. Like he could in theory play all over, but not very well. That made him a weird fit for a team that's now hoping to find a way to get Brooks Lee in the lineup every day, sometime in the medium-term future. Edouard Julien, similar kind of deal defensively where he doesn't have much of a home. They got to figure out what Jose Miranda is going to do. They got to figure out what Royce Lewis is going to do when he comes back. So to deal from a position of strength before people realized it was a strength is kind of an interesting move. Like you think, oh, they don't have enough to replace him. Well, in the aggregate, they're going to think they do, especially with the signing of Donovan Solano. But getting out in front of something like this, it's better to trade a guy a year too early than a year too late. And we've seen that. I mean, I was talking about this with Jose Barrios after his last start in the World Baseball Classic. I was talking about this, not to him, but it looks like the Twins got out when the getting was good on Jose Barrios. And I don't mean or desire any ill will toward him, just that it's obviously been a struggle since that. Do I think the same thing's going to happen with Luis Arraez? Not necessarily. But again, they got a good value. Getting Salas back in the trade too is a tremendous value. So that's number 2. I think the Twins fans will not miss Luis Arraez as much as they think they will. Number 3, Christian Vazquez ends up being a godsend, not only to the rotation, but to the offense as well. Now, he's not known as a great offensive catcher. Very, very few catchers in this day and age are. But I think he's just going to be a little bit better of a line mover offensively, chain mover than Gary Sanchez was. Gary Sanchez, for one reason or another, still unsigned, which is equal parts surprising and not, if that makes sense. Because he can hit, but he doesn't hit enough to be a DH. He's not really a great defensive catcher. He didn't embarrass himself last year. Who knows what he's asking for money-wise? Whatever. Twins fans saw an awful lot of Gary Sanchez behind the plate last year in spots that will now be filled by Christian Vazquez, known as a very good defensive catcher. Seems to be a pretty good clubhouse guy as well. I think Vazquez completely revolutionizes this pitching staff, bullpen, and then you have him hit 7th, 8th, or 9th and give you a respectable average and on-base percentage. I mean, Gary Sanchez could pop a homer every now and then, but this is going to be a little better offensive skill set that's less all or nothing, even if it's not that of a guy that's going to challenge for MVP votes. Number 4, and maybe this one was too easy. Each of Max Kepler's slash numbers from last season will increase this year. And you can blame it on hitting the ball on the ground. You can blame it on the shift or a combination of the two. But Kepler slash 227, 318, 348 last year. Surprisingly enough, that was still better than a 90 OPS plus, which goes to show just how bad the offensive environment was last season. But I think the shift will help, but I just see a better ball player in there than that. And it would have been nonsensical for the Twins to trade him this offseason. I've come back and reconsidered and considered that. And, it's kind of funny that we ever thought this would be too crowded of an outfield when you consider Alex Kirilloff and Trevor Larnach have not shown the ability to stay healthy yet. They're going to need Max Kepler this season. And I think he's going to have a nice little bounce back season. The final offensive one, and this one, I don't know how people are going to feel about it. Donovan Solano plays a much bigger role than people are expecting. Now, I think people will expect him to hit against lefties, play a little second base, maybe a little first base. But I think when you look at the volatility of injuries, there's going to be plenty of playing time to be had by these utility guys. I just think Solano has that little it factor, his contact, kind of guy who can turn the order over on the bottom, keep things moving. You don't want black holes at the bottom of your lineup, whether it's 7, 8, 9, 8, 9. Perfectly respectable hitter for the bottom third. And he's going to do enough of those like small ball things that Twins fans of a certain age have been yearning for that, he might be some of the Boomers' favorite player. But I think he plays a bigger role. I think when you look at every World Series champion at the end of the year, or even just really good teams in the playoffs, they always have that one guy where they're like, wow, where'd they get him? Man, glad they had him. You get to the end of the season and it might be your third guy on the bench is playing, huge games for you starting in the playoffs because he's on that hot streak. It was like Yasmani Grandal not playing in that postseason for the Dodgers after things kind of went sideways on him with pass balls and that sort of thing. So I'm I'm thinking that Solano is going to play a bigger role than people are considering. Now, before we get into the pitching side of these, let's just talk for a brief second about LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn jobs can get you not only a job for yourself, but jobs for qualified candidates if you're looking to hire somebody. So find qualified candidates faster and better this time around on linkedin.com/lockedonmlb. You can post your job that you're looking to fill for free. But again, too, it's an interesting social network for professionals. So you can interact and connect with people either in your line of work or your industry or your business itself. It's an untapped resource for a lot of people. And so check it out, linkedin.com/lockedonmlb, and post your job for free. Now, the 5 more lead pipe locks, and I hesitate to call them 5 more pitching because I screwed up the math last week and got called out on it. Deservedly so. Don't get me wrong. Just I didn't know people would be listening that closely. So thank you. Keep me on my toes. So the first one, at least one Twins pitcher will take the next step forward and not in a small way. Now, I'm not trying to make these deliberately kind of flimsy so that I can fall back on, yeah, I was right. That's not my style. But what I'm thinking is someone like Tyler Mahle takes that next step to where you want whoever this guy is the consensus choice to take the ball first game of the playoffs or opening day next year, whatever it is. This is the bulldog. This is the stopper. I'm trying to think of who I feel it's going to be. I think that it's a 3-horse race. I don't see Sonny Gray getting to that level just because at the age he's at, he just kind of is who he is. And Kenta Maeda, it'd be unfair to expect that. I think Joe Ryan's got a shot just because of the moxie and he knows what to do with what he has. You can't sleep on that. He doesn't have that big time stuff, but at times Zach Greinke didn't have big time stuff. He was a very smart pitcher who could outsmart opposing hitters. Do I think Joe Ryan has the ability to do that and find his peak as a very, very good starter in this league? I do. He'd probably be my third. From a raw stuff standpoint, it would be Mahle for me, but I think Pablo Lopez is the guy that I'm expecting to take that step forward. He was just so good early last year and then kind of faltered down the stretch. And he's just looked very sharp so far. Obviously, spring training, caveats apply. But I love the total package of repertoire and how he commands it and how he uses it. I think the changeup is phenomenal. And I that's my, what would you call it? Guilty pleasure is a really good changeup. And honestly, I don't feel guilty. It's just something that I feel like maybe, people like big time fastballs and nasty sliders. And I like those things too, but a really good changeup is just, it's just the best. And I think that's what's going to be the reason Pablo Lopez takes a step toward being an ace. It's going to be a big jump for him. Do I think that we'll call him a top 10 pitcher? I can't say that, but he'll be in that conversation where you'll say, if the Twins can line it up, you want him starting game 1 in the postseason. I'm going to be on the record for that. Number 2 on the second segment of lead pipe locks. There obviously won't be a Juan Duran, but I am seeing I think there'll be another breakout, kind of like a Griffin Jacks level breakout. And it's going to be a reliever that nobody is talking about right now, like Griffin Jacks a year ago. So my initial thought is Giovanni Moran. Heat from the left side. The command's got to get there, but the changeup's good. Good secondary stuff. I don't know, though. Is that too obvious of an answer? But I love the skill set. I think there'll be an opportunity there. If it's not Moran, though, the two guys that I'm kind of keeping at the back of my, the back of my head, back burner, Cole Sands. If you look at like weighted pitch values last year, his fastball graded out well without peak velocity. So then you look at his repertoire and it's fastball, slider, split. Now, to me, that's enough that you could obviously be a starter. But if the fastball's good, I think the slider got hit pretty hard and then the split was pretty good. I think you can kind of condense that down in a reliever's repertoire where he can just come out throwing high octane with, whether you want one or two secondaries, whatever works. But I could see him having like that Zach Littell late in 2019 jump, where one of the like a guy like that becomes way more trusted. And then Dennis Santana, I just keep coming back to also too because out of options has some big league success and big time stuff. Obviously, we talked about stuff plus just loving his fastball from Friday's show. So go back and check that out too. But yeah, Sands or Santana would make some sense. And I'm talking about early in the season because as you'll see later on, nope, actually, you know what? I had these notes. The one that just hit the cutting room floor. I think Josh Winder is going to be a very good reliever, but in the second half, he's going to have to get through his shoulder stuff. And there won't be enough rotation spots opening up in the meantime. The Twins will see Josh Winder be like, he can help us in the bullpen. So that's not one of the lead pipe locks. It initially was, but it fell off the cutting room floor because I realized that my last one had gotten skipped. So keep in the back of your mind that I think Josh Winder helps this team a lot as a reliever late in the season. So number 3, Jorge Lopez makes sure everyone forgets about his 2022 stretch with the Twins. Now, he was so good in the first half that he was at the All-Star game. Obviously, I think there's a story about him and Buxton chatting about how cool it would be if the Twins traded for him. I mean, I don't know how realistic or true those stories are, but they make for good copy. And I know like there was talk about messing with his repertoire and what it did to him with the Twins and that sort of thing. And I just think the fastball, the sinking fastball and the secondary stuff, regardless of how it's used, it's just too good for him to not be a difference-making reliever. If he's not as good as he was in the first half last year, that's still acceptable. I'm not expecting that. But there's really no reason why he's not going to be the team's second most reliable reliever. I think the talent is there, everything you need. He's a guy who's struggled in the past, so he's learned how to learn from those mistakes or just learned from how the league is, how difficult it is for a young player. Yeah, I think Jorge Lopez turns things around in a big way. Okay, so this one, I said there will be 2 starters. This is number 9, by the way. There will be 2 starters not in the opening day rotation that will be in it when the season ends. Now, I'm leaning Bailey Ober, which I think is the easy one. Bailey Ober is basically 5B. Somebody in the next segment asks about if they go a 6-man rotation. Bailey Ober's the 6th guy. If they need to manage the innings of Kenta Maeda or something like that. But I'm thinking when the season ends, Bailey Ober. I say Ober's obvious, but then I think about the fact that he hasn't been a durable guy either. So I'll stick with there'll be 2 starters. My initial inclination is Ober and Louis Varland. And I went back and forth with Josh Winder, who's behind a little bit in spring training, and Simeon Woods Richardson, who I think, even though he was just phenomenal, he's still the youngest of the group. They may slow play him just a little bit more. Now, with that said, I mean, he could be ready at the end of the year. He's only going to be 22, 23. I'm going to go Ober and Varland, but I think Simeon Woods Richardson could very easily make that a tough decision. Still, though, I think there will be, and I'm not talking about, 2 rookies making the last 2 starts of the season or something. I'm talking about these guys will be mainstays, and it will not be for naught because the final lead pipe lock is that the Twins are going to win the 2023 Central. This team is just too deep, and we'll do some cross promotion with other teams in the division, and I'm sure I'll take heat for it, which is fine. But the Twins are going to win this division. They're deeper. They are strong up the middle. They have more relief pitching than people think. They have more rotation help than people think. I think people are sleeping on them right now. This is a 92-win club, and I hope we revisit this in October. I really do. Let's talk about Built Bars. And you heard Nash talk about them on our postcasts. They're delicious, nutritious, taste like a candy bar, but they are healthy. which is incredible. It's amazing what the food technology has become over the last few years, because I had a friend who was a bodybuilder in the 80s, and he said the proteins and everything were just wretched. And now we have Built Bar, which is, like I said, a protein bar. It tastes like a candy bar. If you want to get on that train, you can go to builtbar.com, use promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off your next order. I am literally standing by my mailbox waiting for my first shipment, because I've been told by a number of people that they hit the spot. They deliver on their promises. So I'm stoked. Now let's wrap up with listener questions. And I've mentioned this on a number of occasions. We will close with listener questions for the last segment of each show until the regular season starts. I think we're going to do a morning after segment, a preview segment, and then a free-for-all in the middle. But until we have actual meaningful games to break down, more meaningful than Jose De Leon helping pitch a perfect game in the World Baseball Classic, we're going to answer your questions, because, again, this is an interactive, fun show, and hopefully you're enjoying it. So we'll get to as many of these as we can in the few minutes we have left here. Extreme Elixir wants to know, if the Twins do go the route of a 6-man rotation, who do you expect to take on that 6th-man role? I think the writing is on the wall that it's Bailey Ober. And, I've talked about him a couple different times. And it's, it's tough, because you're not going to bump any of the top 5 in the rotation if they're healthy. But at the same time, Bailey Ober has done nothing to prove that he shouldn't be in the big leagues pitching every 5th day. It's hard to know if he would handle a relief workload based on the fact that he's thrown the right number of innings, but not in a sense of, up, down, 2 days on, 3 days off, 1 day on, 2 days off. So that would be one way to get Bailey Ober regular work. But at the same time, it's just, I don't know if they're going to do that 6-man role. I don't know if it makes sense to manipulate Maeda that much, or manipulate the rest of the rotation to accommodate Maeda. I'll be curious to see how it plays out, because, as we noted on Friday, I don't think the Twins need a 5th starter, let alone a 6th, until about it's like 2 weeks into the season, like a month from today. So it would be Bailey Ober, but I'm not sure I see it. Josiah Waldner, fan of the show, been around for a long time, watching us on the postcast last year. We love Josiah a lot. He wants to know which prospect has impressed me the most in spring training, and who's disappointed me. And I mean, Edouard Julien has to be pretty much at the top of that order, putting himself right in the mix to help this team, and maybe soon. Don't know where he'll play defensively, but has bat, will travel, has been an adage in baseball for years. And I think it applies to this young guy. I mean, disappointing. It's for me, disappointing is the fact that Austin Martin isn't healthy. It's not disappointment in him. It's disappointment in the circumstance. And it's, we talk about Barrios struggling with Toronto, but how do the Twins feel about this deal? Simeon Woods Richardson is close, but pitching prospects are risky. The odds of him being as good as Jose Barrios are probably not, over his first 5 years, probably not as strong as we'd like to think. And if Austin Martin's nothing more than a utility guy, or maybe never makes the big leagues, then yeah, it's just doesn't look like a good trade for anyone. So that would be my route for disappointing, just because it's a shame. It really is. It's not a disappointment in him. It's just a disappointment in the situation. Good friend Dave Mincarelli wants to know if Brooks Lee is a viable option at second base if Polanco can't make opening day, or will it be Farmer, Kyle Farmer, not just a guy on this roster? If you know, you know. No, I don't. Brooks Lee's not in that mix yet. I think he'll probably go to Double-A, as I noted last week. At least that's what I would do. And the 40-man's a bit bunched up right now. And I think just Donovan Solano will play over there. Nick Gordon will play over there if it came to it. Because I don't know how much Solano's going to play first. I don't know what's up with Kirilloff. That's the biggest issue with all of these spots, is not knowing where certain guys will be needed. Will Farmer be needed at third because of Miranda's shoulder? Will Farmer be needed at second because of Polanco's ankle? Will Solano be needed at second because of Polanco's ankle? Will Solano be needed at first because of Kirilov's wrist? Will Miranda be needed at first because of Kirilov's wrist? Like, on any given day, there's not really a great answer to any of those questions. And so, no, it's not Brooks Lee, but I think it's probably, I think they would view Solano as a more everyday type player than Farmer. But again, that's just me kind of thinking out loud here. Farmer's obviously, he makes more money. He's younger. The price to acquire him was a little bit higher. So maybe they view him higher. I just think with Farmer, it was like, yeah, he'll hit lefties. He can play a little bit all over. And for the moment, he probably was the starting shortstop on opening day until the Korea situation shook out. But I don't see Brooks Lee anytime soon. It'll maybe be this year, but not right out of the chute. I think it's going to be Solano playing a lot of second base. Minnesota Twins fan 1991. Hopefully I'm not betraying his confidence, but he goes by Jimmy. Asks, outside of baseball, how am I doing? Well, this isn't a self-help podcast, but good, very good. Got a 4-month-old son who got shots this morning, but he's doing great, growing well. 5-year-old daughter in kindergarten, lovely wife. It's all going very well, Jimmy. So thank you for your concern. I appreciate that. It's nice to know that people care. Terry wants to know if you could sign Sonny Gray to a 3-year deal worth about 55 to 60 million, would you do it? Or, assuming he's healthy all year, Tyler Mahle to a 5-year deal worth 85 to 95. So the reason he's asking is those are the only 2 free agent pitchers he'd be interested in bringing back. So he's not interested in Maeda, which, I mean, it all depends on the price. Maeda's on a really good contract right now, so he's probably going to want to cash in if he has even a decent season. So that would probably put him out of the Twins range. But I digress. I would lean Mahle there just because Sonny Gray's older. The stuff isn't quite as good. And if you have a healthy year with Mahle and he shows you what he's capable of, he's going to be worth, I think, every penny of 5 years, 85 million. So I'm not opposed to that Gray contract. I don't know. So 3 years and 60 is 20 million. 3 years and 55 puts you at about 18.3. That's not a horrible value either, but 3 years is quite a while. I'm going to lean Mahle, and I'll say that I would do both. Like, neither of them are a sticking point for me. I like the possible length of time I'll have with Mahle, and I like the skill set a little better, but they're obviously both very good pitchers. Final question from you guys. Devlin wants to know, do we see the front office being aggressive at the deadline this year if the Twins are within reach? And if so, how much influence do you think assistant GM, in quotes, Carlos Correa will have? In theory, yes, I think they would be active. But what's hard to look at right now is where. What are they going to need in July? Will they need another reliever? Maybe. But then again, how active are you if you only get a decent reliever? Like, are you very active if you go trade for another Jorge Lopez at that price? By itself, that's not really active. And I think Lopez is more than a decent reliever, but just for comparison's sake, when I think of aggressive, I think of you go out and get a rental who's going to start game 1 for you in the playoffs. A hired assassin like Greinke was, or CC Sabathia for the Brewers, or way back, Randy Johnson for the Astros, like 1998. And I don't know that I see that. I think that they're going to be strict to their approach, that if you get enough really solid starting pitching, you can win in this league. I don't think they're going to spend a ton for a reliever again. Again, it all depends on how you view the package that they traded for Jorge Lopez. I didn't think it was prohibitive, but your mileage may vary. So, do they need help in center at this point in July? Do they need help because they have DFA'd Joey Gallo because he couldn't hit 180? Those questions I need to answer or have answered before I can really Feel good about my contribution here. Now, with that said, to me, because I think they're going to win the division, as I noted last segment, I don't think they'll have to be active. I think it'll be more along the lines of, do they need a Michael Fulmer type? Sure. Do they need a utility infielder type? Sure. Now, again, I don't know why with Farmer, Gordon, and Solano on the team you would need that. Again, that's the complicating factor is they're pretty well put together puzzle-wise where, if they have issues in the outfield, hopefully Larnach is healthy, Kirilloff healthy. If they have issues on the infield, they've got depth. If they've got issues in the rotation, they've got depth. So not knowing how that depth gets cut into makes it difficult to know how, quote unquote, active they'll have to be. I hope that's not a cop-out. And maybe it is, but I hope it's not. But I think they'll be as active as the situation demands, which was the case last deadline, but was not the case in the offseason before that when they signed Carlos Correa, but then didn't get any relief help, went into this rotation or the season with a rotation that had Chris Archer and Dylan Bundy. They tried to remedy that. You can say they didn't do enough. That's fair. I'm not going to argue with that. But I trust them to see what they need in July, if there's anything, and assess it. Hopefully that's a good enough answer. Parting question for the masses. And again, this is me asking you a question, posing you a question for the comments so we can discuss it. If we get good discussion, we can bring it to another episode. We'll see where it goes. My question to you, and I want to get your rating 1 out of 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. How concerned are you, dear listener, about Byron Buxton's season starting on time? Where are you at in terms of his readiness for the season? Are you feeling 1, not very good, or 10, supremely confident? Where do you fall on there? I would love to hear from you in the comments. Now, with that said, that's a wrap on Locked On Twins for March 13th. I want to thank you so much for hanging out. Make sure you follow at Locked On Twins on Twitter, at Locked On MIN, and at Brandon_WARNE. And again, too, 5-star reviews, like, subscribe, whatever you can do to contribute on that end is more than enough for us. We appreciate you more than you'll ever know. Hang out in the comments. Send me questions for the final segment each day. And that's that. Mrs. Brandon Warren signing off, saying thank you so much. And don't forget to stop by tomorrow to Locked On Twins. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.